Welcome everybody to our NIPA video series, which will go through a little bit of detail around some of the things that we go through the NIPA program and what we're seeking to achieve. What we're trying to do through these videos is bring the whole NIPA program to life in advance of your role, either participating as an age manager, a NIPA helper, or even a Bronzy as part of the program. So sit back and enjoy these videos. Make sure if there's anything that's not clear, make sure you ask any questions of anyone that you can see involved as part of the program. And we look forward to seeing you on the beach. So the theory component of our NIPA program is something we're going to place increased emphasis on. It's really important that kids understand what we do as surf lifesavers and the role that they can have in protecting the community. So through the theory program, we're going to go through things like the chain of survival, Doctors A, B, C, D. We'll talk about the different types of waves and rip formations. And we'll also talk about how we communicate as surf lifesavers, both back to base, but also to our fellow lifesavers out in the water. And we do that through signals. The theory components are really important, and so it builds a foundation then for their knowledge that will stand them in good stead as they then take on further responsibilities through the SRC, cadets, and ultimately the Bronze program and beyond. So chain of survivals, Doctors A, B, C, D is one of the fundamental things that we all apply as surf lifesavers. And for the NIPA program, it's really important that kids get familiar with that chain of survival. So Doctors A, B, C, D, what's that stand for? Well, the first is danger. So the first thing we'll do when we approach a patient is assess the danger both to them but also to us. The last thing we want to do as surf lifesavers is put ourselves in danger. Dangers can include a whole variety of different aspects, whether it be on the land or in the water. It can include the marine environment, but also issues such as power lines and the like as well. R stands for response. This is really important to see whether or not the patient will respond to our inquiries, but also as part of the assessment of the patient. So in terms of response, what we do, we use the COWS technique. And COWS is really around C-O-W-S. C, can you hear me? Walking around the patient, given that they might be immobilised and they might follow. O stands for open your eyes. So you're asking the patient to open their eyes in terms of a response back to us to know whether or not they're conscious or not. W, what's your name? Again, another verbal technique used, and if they are actually then lucid and talking and get a response, we can sort of make an assessment of the patient based upon that. And the S is squeeze my hand, squeeze my left and my right hand. We're really doing that just to make sure the victim or the patient hasn't had a stroke in particular. So we go through that technique to actually help part of our assessment of our patient before we move onto our airways, our breathing, our CPR, and ultimately potentially our defib. S stands for send for help. Again, the most important thing we can do is actually call for an ambulance if we're in a situation, and then we continue to work on the patient while waiting for the ambulance to arrive. We use our marker down here at Portsea, MOR 119, as a location for the ambulance to attend. So once we assess the danger of the patient, we believe it's safe then to approach the patient. We then look to assess airways. And the airways is all about making sure there's no obstructions to breathing, and that can happen through swallowed tongues. It could be seaweed and the like as well. So once we're comfortable that the airways are clear, what we need to do is assess for breathing. The way we can do that is look, listen and feel. In terms of looking for the rise and fall of the chest, feeling breath upon our cheek, and assessing the patient. In the view that the patient is not breathing, what we generally then do is move to C in the chain of command, which is CPR. So C in our Doctors A, B, C, D stands for CPR. And really what we're doing now is that we're looking to restart the patient's heart, particularly if there's no heart rate or no pulse and they're not breathing. And we do that in a measured 30 compressions to 2 breaths is the ratio we use. Hopefully we've got someone else to help us with this, because CPR actually can be quite tiring. If not, we need to do it by ourselves. We need to make sure that we're fully equipped in order to do that, and we have the knowledge to be actually able to do that. We're using the hardest part of our hand, the palm of our hand, and we're looking to place that basically in between the nipples in the middle of the chest. We're looking to compress essentially to the way down, And the beat we use is either baby shark or staying alive, but it is a regular pushing down in order to try to restart the blood and get the blood pumping through the body. As I said, 30 compressions, and then we'll do 2 breaths. We'll continue doing CPR until either the patient recovers, or there's a defib's brought down, and we will move to the next stage, being D for defibrillation. So we won't always be working with adult patients. We might find there'll be infants as well, and therefore that chain of command is actually still applicable to an infant, although slightly different in terms of things like compressions, where we're not going to use the full palm of our hand, but maybe use a couple of fingers to do compressions. But generally speaking, we want to go through that whole chain of command as well for an infant as we would for an adult or youth patient. So finally, D stands for defibrillation or defib. And that's really the last stage of our chain of command. If we're finding that the patient's not responding to our CPR that we've undertaken, we'll actually then use a defib. So defibs, they're fixed in the club. We also have portable versions we use down on patrol. You'll see those on NIPA programs. The first aiders will have access to our defibs. And really what they are, it's designed to give the patient an electric shock to try to restart their heart or restart the rhythms of their heart. A really important piece of kit that we use. It's pretty much self-explanatory. Once the pads have been attached to the patient, the machine itself will analyse the patient and advise whether a shock or not is required. And we'll generally talk people through the various steps that are required in order to restart the heart. So in your packs you'll have a set of reference cards, and on those reference cards we have a page on signals. Signals are really important to us in terms of how we can communicate with each other as lifesavers, particularly for those that are in the water and communicating with those in the beach. We do that through a series of hand signals, or we can often use flags to do that. Obviously really important too, if radio communications are not in range or the radio is not working for whatever reason, we can use these non-verbal cues in order to communicate with each other and actually direct activities such as rescue activities and the like as well. So this is the Portsea Back Beach on a normal day. Generally, at Portsea Back Beach, we set the flags up just to the left of Huey's, and Huey's being the rock formation you can see there at the sort of the middle to the right of the screen. Really important we set up there because generally speaking there's not a lot of rocks in that area there. Generally speaking there's not a lot of rip formations outside that area, and it's a safe place for the beach going public to swim. Again, a really important part of what we're trying to achieve through the NIPA program is educating our young nippers and hopefully have them come through then to do their SRC, their cadets and their bronze, and potentially beyond that as well. It all starts through the NIPA program, and you'll see on daylight today with our volunteer patrol, we'll have SRCs all the way through to gold medallion holders patrolling the beach. And a really important thing for you to remember is this is your club. So in terms of the facilities that we have, you should make sure you avail yourself to those. Don't just be a member through the NIPA program, but become a member of the club. And do that by actually using the facilities such as the bathrooms, the showers, taking some equipment out to practice and train. Really important aspects of what we do. What we actually find is that the kids actually learn a lot just through their own repetitive behaviours outside the NIPA program. Grabbing a board, taking it down the beach and practicing. And if you do that, please just make sure you return it, because it's nothing worse at the end of the day for us to have to go around and pick up boards off the beach. This is your club, make sure you make the most of it.
Morning all, my name's Nick, and today I'm going to be running you through the beach flags with life-saving competition. So, to start off, beach flags, as you can see here, is a course that's roughly 15 metres by 10 metres wide. You have the starting end and you have the finishing end. The number of beach flags is always going to be one less than the amount of competitors lining up. So therefore, obviously when the kids run up or when the competitors run up, there'll be one person that gets knocked out each time. When we come to beach flags, there's a number of commands and there's a number of positions that you need to go into. So for when you're in training and when you're at carnivals, you'll always have 3 people. You'll have the starter, and the starter will be in this position here. He'll have his whistle, and he will obviously start the competitors. You'll have the checker, and the idea behind the checker is that he makes sure all the competitors' bodies are perfectly in line. And when I say perfectly in line, you've got this horizontal line, and then the competitor needs to be straight off it. Their body can't be on an angle, left or right, so they walk along and make sure everyone's lined up perfectly. You've got the finisher, and the finisher is up the other end, making sure that the competitors grab the flags properly and then works out whoever's been knocked out. Getting into course preparation. This is not a bad course at the moment because we can see it's all relatively flat. There's a few footprints here and there. But when you get into life-saving competition with flags, you'll often find that the course will get chopped up quite a bit. You know, multiple rounds will happen and you'll start to get divots in the sand, or you might get big pockets. So what we want to do is work from the back, then forwards. So working from the back, you can see here, for example, there's a lot of holes. So I'm just going to come along and I'm going to use my foot to make sure they're all smoothed out. And the reason that I'm doing that is because when I do my turn and I start to run, I don't want to turn and fall into a hole that might impede my ability to move up the course as quickly as possible. So I've come along, I've smoothed out all these sections behind, and then I get to the line, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to ensure my feet are in the line, and that's an important requirement. And then I'm going to look forwards and I'm going to say, okay, how can I improve my forward area to ensure that I can get a really strong push off so I can turn as quickly as I can to make sure I'm the first one up there to get a flag. So I'm looking down and I can see, oh, here's a foot spot. So I'm going to smooth that over. Here's another one. I'm going to smooth that over. Now I can see that it's all looking quite nice. Then I'm going to lay my body out on the ground as such. Okay. Now, as I said, you've got your checker and he's ensuring that your feet are in the feet well, that my body is straight as it can be, and that I'm in the correct position to start. For competitors, a really important requirement is that you have your heels together, like so, and that you also have your fingertips up on your wrists. So in this position, I know that I can't get disqualified. And that's a really important requirement because there's only a few things that you can do to get disqualified in flags, but I want to make sure that my body is absolutely correct so I don't get disqualified by the checker. Moving into the next round. So what you're going to have is you're going to have the starter who's standing over there, and his commandments are going to be competitors ready, heads down, and then he'll blow his whistle. We're going to go through the technique that I've found to be one of the quickest for beach flags. So let's walk through the motions, and they are, you're in this position. The first motion you want to do is putting your hands up and your feet back, right? And we'll do a little bird's eye overview. So you're like this, so ready? That's the first motion, and then you're pushing up, so like that. And what this is doing is it's raising your chest up and it's getting your foot into the position that you want it to be. So the second motion from that is here and driving your leg through. Now what that's doing is it's getting your body up and then you can turn as quickly as you can. Instead of having your chin facing up and your chest open and turning around, which is going to be quite slow, you want it to be really tucked in so you're driving around. And then what you're doing is you're really loading on this front leg. Because that front leg, just like a sprinting start, is what you're going to be able to drive off. When you fire off the line, you want to make sure that the first couple of steps, the first couple of meters, you're slightly hunched over. You don't want to drive up and have your chest open straight away. You really want to carry that forward momentum. So you're driving forwards and then you're lifting up and you're continuing to sprint through. We've done the start. Now we're sprinting up the beach. This is another section that unfortunately you can get disqualified if you're not doing the right thing. So what we're going to run through is what you can do and what you can't do. What you can do is sprint as quickly as possible. What you can do is you can get your shoulder in front of the other competitor, and that's naturally going to happen because all the competitors are usually only a metre apart. So naturally when everyone turns and starts sprinting, they're going to combine up to go for the limited amount of flags. So you want to get your shoulder in front of the other competitor first because that means you've got the advantage when you come to dive. What you can't do is you can't use your hands to grab their hand or grab their arm or grab their bailers or grab their legs. You can't do anything that's going to impede them from their sprinting motion. your shoulders fine, but not your arms holding them back. So you're sprinting up, you got your shoulder in front of the other person, you're running up, and because I'm in front of the other person, when I dive, I'm going to have the best opportunity to grab the flag. So that's running up the beach, and now we'll come up here and do the beach flag section. As I mentioned earlier, the beach flag end, the finishing end, is staged as such. You've got all your beach flags, and the beach flags correlate with positioned between the competitors. So the beach flag won't be in line with the competitor. If you've got two competitors, it'll be in the middle. So that means each of those competitors can go for that flag, and as such, moving down the line. This rope won't be here. That's just for demonstration purposes. The finishing judge will pull that out of the way. That's just to assist them with making sure the flags go in the right position. So this is what it'll look like. You'll have all your lined up. I'm running up the beach as I demonstrated before. My shoulder's in front of the other person. And what you want to do is you don't want to run up all the way and lean over. What's going to happen? Somebody who's really well taught in how to dive for the flag might sneak around your legs and grab it out of your hands. So, teach right from the beginning is that depending on how far you can dive and depending on how quickly you're moving when you're sprinting, you want to judge your distance to make sure that when you dive, you're fully outstretched and you have the best opportunity to get yourself as far as possible to grab that flag in front of the other person that's running beside you. It's the misconception here at this stage that wherever your hand is positioned, you might have priority over the flag. That's not the case. The facts are that basically it's the last person standing with the flag. So if I get the flag first and I've got it in my hands and the other competitor hasn't, then I proceed to the next round. If a competitor and I both have our hands on it, the judge will make the call, and most of the time it'll be you do a rerun, but only those two competitors, because everyone else would have got their own flag. So if I both have our hand on the flag and we grabbed it at the same time, then we do a rerun, just us two. If I've grabbed the flag first and the line judge has seen that, and then little Johnny has come over 1 second later, he's been a little bit slower, but he's still made the dive and grabbed it, the finishing judge might call that I've actually won it and he's come in incorrectly over the top to try and grab it as well. So they'll make that call. So that's why you want to get to the flag the quickest, make sure you get it, really strong grip, one or two hands depending on your dive style, and then pull it back in to just make sure that you've got it and nobody else can grab it. So we've covered all the basics with beach flags. To summarise, a few great tips to remember is that we want to make sure that with beach flags, we're setting up the course correctly, we're doing the correct start, we've got our body in the right position, and we're finishing correctly. So remember, making sure the field is clean, making sure your body's in the right position, heels together, fingers to wrists, you've got your head down, you're really ready to spring out of action. Then when the gun goes, you do that movement, like I said, and you can slow that down and you can look through each of the stages. Field, you've got your shoulder in front, but you're not grabbing on. When you get to the end, big dive, grab the flag, make sure you're the only one holding it. If you do grab it at the same time, that's fine. You're going to do a rerun and you can do exactly what we've talked about. For parents, when you're setting the course up, we really want to make sure that we're doing the correct process right from the start. We're teaching the kids the right things to do, so when they get to their carnivals, they're not thinking, oh, the flag might be halfway down the field, or oh, we'll do heads up, heads down, heads up, heads down, go. We just want to make sure that we're teaching the kids the right thing to do. So it might be fun to, do all these different commands, or it might be fun to have the flag halfway down the field, but I really encourage you not to do that. The kids are going to have a great time regardless. All the sprinting they're going to do, all the playing with their mates. Let's just make sure that we're teaching them the right process from the beginning so that they can go to these carnivals and have a great time and not get disqualified.
Alright, hi everyone, my name's Emil. I'm going to be teaching you guys about the surf event for nippers. What the surf event is, it's a swim around some buoys. So you'll get the nippers to swim around and come in, and then you can also do some other drills and activities, and I'll describe those as well. So at the beginning, when you do the swim, what will happen is you'll line up nippers. Maybe you'll have them in 2 groups, and you'll line them up on a line like this, and you get them to swim around. There'll be some buoys or some bronzies set up in a course, and you'll get them to swim around the buoys. Now, what's important before you start them is you want to encourage them to assess the water and assess like what the conditions are doing. So, for example, you might say if there's a race before them or a little, if there's some nippers going before them, you might encourage them to watch what the nippers are doing and see and watch them how they drift, if they drift across or not, and through assessing what's going on in the water, then they can better line, more efficient line to the can and around the can. So, for example, if you see that a lot of the swimmers are getting swept across, then you might encourage the nippers to swim parallel to the actual sweep. So it's just efficient. Another thing that you encourage them to do is watch for rips. Try and get them to find where rips are, where the trough is, where the sandbank is, and explain to them that often to get out the back to the buoy, it's not always quickest. Sometimes you might want to run across the sandbank. So if you explain that to them, then that's always good. Another thing you might want to encourage your nippers to do before they go and do their swim is actually go in the water and assess the conditions themselves. So this is important because in the water, the sand's not always flat and it's not always a gradual sloping. There's always things like rocks and potholes that they can trip in, and it can lead to injury. So it's always important to get them to walk in the water where they're starting. And for example, right here, for example, there's a bit of a pothole, and you'd say, okay, you want to stay near the bank. Be wary of these little grooves in the sand, and then you'd get them to walk maybe to waist height. So then you'd start them on a line like this. You'd stand on the side of them and you'd say competitors ready, set, and then you'd blow a whistle, or if you don't have a whistle, you just say go. It's really important that you try and make them only listen for the whistle and not watch you, because then they'll just anticipate when you're going to say it and they'll break. And if they go and do competitions later on, if they join the comp team, then it's a really bad habit trying to anticipate when the whistle is, because that's how you get disqualified. So just encourage them, only go when I whistle. Another thing you want to talk to your nippers about is how to wade properly in the ocean and how to duck dive. Often what we see is the nippers, they'll run in really quickly, but they don't know what to do when they're in the water. So they'll just stand there and just kind of waddle through the water, and we want them to get out of that habit as quickly as possible. So what you want them to do is when they're wading in the water, when the water's maybe up to their knees, maybe a little bit higher, is you want them to really be getting their legs out and over the waves, and it's just like taking really big strides. So it looks something like this, looks a bit silly out of the water, but in the water it's so much more efficient. Now when they get up to knee to kind of chest height, that's when they will be doing duck dives. So basically what you want to teach them to do is to, when a wave comes, or if there's no waves, when it's just flat, if it's like up to their hips, then you want them to dive under the water, to really grab the sand with their hands like this, and then push off with their feet like a sprinter into another dive, and then they keep doing that until it gets just too deep to do that, maybe about this depth. And something that you want to really emphasize is that when they do duck dive, you don't want them just to be jumping up and then down again, because that's not very efficient. You really want to emphasize jumping across the water instead of just jumping up and down. If there's white water, I will do it maybe like a meter before the white water hits me, and I'll dive underneath the white water. But sometimes if it's a bit of a lull, or if you're at the front beach, obviously there's not going to be any waves to dive under, so I'll just keep doing it rapidly until I get out of my depth. But yeah, so it typically like a meter, 2 meters in front of the wave, whether it's white water or just a clean blue wave, is ideal. Another thing that you might want to mention is if it's a really big wave that they're diving under, sometimes it's just worth lying flat on the ground and grabbing hold of the sand and just letting the wave wash over you like this. The reason why you wouldn't get them to sit like that is because it's just more, you're creating more room for the wave to pick you up. So if you're lying on the sand like a stingray, it just washes over you. That's especially useful when we have big shore break. Sometimes that's the only way to get out, is just by lying on the sand for a while and letting the wave go over you and then swimming out. Another thing that you want to talk to them about is swimming technique. So unlike in a pool, obviously you've got waves, you've got chop, and you've got to look where you're going, most importantly. So when you're swimming out there, you want to encourage them to look where they're going, but you don't want them to be swimming, taking their strokes, and then stop, sitting there stationary and just kind of bobbing their head up, looking around for the buoy or whatever. You want to try and teach them how to sight properly, and the way you do that is you take your stroke, and instead of taking a breath to the side like you normally would in a pool, every maybe 5 or 10 strokes, you put your hand out like that, you lift your head up, and then you quickly look where you're going, and then you just take a normal stroke. So I'll show you what it looks like in the water, but on the land it looks something like this. So I'd sight, and then I'd just go back into my normal stroke. That's so much more efficient because you don't stop, your body doesn't go straight down into the ocean. You just keep your speed going, and you want to try and encourage them to sight properly as well. If they're swimming and a whitewater wave comes, what you want them to do is to take a big stroke, like maybe a meter out before the whitewater hits them, a really big stroke, and then just dive, like with that stroke, dive underneath the whitewater, and just like maybe do a dolphin kick, like kind of, so it'll look like something like you dive under, and then you just pop out the back and swim out. If it's a really, really big one that they probably would still get washed around with, then sometimes it's worth just stopping and then doing breaststroke underwater, grabbing the ground, and then letting the wave roll over, and then pushing back off and keep swimming. Often, the best way to come in is to catch a wave. So what you want to tell them is, at all costs, whatever you're doing, it's always quicker to catch a wave in. So if they see a wave coming, even if it's not a perfect one, it's always worth just trying to swim hard and catch it. So, and to catch it, what they would do is they'd obviously see the wave coming, and before the wave comes, they'd be swimming as hard as they can, like sprinting and kicking their legs. And then once the wave picks them up, that's when they would stop swimming, and they'd just go into a rocket ship kind of streamlined kind of pose, and let the wave take them. And if they feel like they're kind of falling off the wave a little bit, they can take a few strokes. But it's important that they stay as streamlined as possible, otherwise the wave will just dump them on the sandbank. Now, if there aren't any waves to catch, then typically you want them to start duck diving when they can reach the ground with their stroke. So if they're swimming and they take a deep stroke and they can touch the sand, that's typically when it's time to start duck diving. So, but yeah, duck diving and wading is the same. You'd be duck diving in this kind of depth water, and then wading in knee depth water. Often what will happen if the nippers aren't coming first or second, they'll typically just waddle up the beach like it's just, nothing. And what you really want to encourage them to do is, even if they're coming last, even if they're really far behind, always sprinting up the beach, giving it their all. It's just really good. It's really important because it's about sportsmanship at the end of the day, and it's about everybody trying their best. So you want to encourage them to run all the way up, and yeah, give it their all.
Competitors ready, set.
Hi, I'm Lockie and this is Tilly. We're going to run through a few board drills with you today to help you get through the NIP program. It's normally a progressive thing. You do a different skill each age group as you go, and you try and harness that skill. The first thing to remember is, and the club really cares about this, when you're practicing on land, you've got to dig a hole for the fin box to sit in, because we break a lot of fins. They're quite flexible, and on the smaller boards they're even more flexible, and they don't like us breaking the fins. So the first thing to learn is how you land on the board. So normally we do the dry land, so it's the first skill you learn. So we'd have a few goes of practicing and we'd walk up and we try and land on the board. So I'll get Tilly to do that. General rule is, if you have your arms bent somewhere in that range, you don't want to be like that. You're too far forward if you hunch like that, and you're not in a very strong position. So you go back a bit. Normally the rule is, if your arms are bent like that in a strong position, that's about the land. Some people say mid-chest, but every kid's a different size. So if I landed on the board, I'd be back here a bit. Otherwise, I'll nosedive the board because I'll have too much weight forward. It makes a big difference when you get to 12 under 13. Much bigger, you still land in the same spot. If you come up, and you want to grab the handles almost straight away. When you're looking for the spot, this might bore them a bit, but this is the first thing they need to learn. It's the first skill. So that's much better. So you can repeat this over and over again until they get it. Okay, now you want to practice paddling. So your legs would come out, and that gets you a strong position on the board for paddling. If your feet are together like this, it's a much weaker position for paddling. So we put our legs slightly off the back, and paddling is actually a cross-core activity. So your opposites. So you try and drive other just your arms. Normally in the water, you want your elbows in the water. It's just good to practice on the land so they get the feel for it. You can dig holes if you want to see the reach. So go again. All the way forward as far as you can, like swimming, and you drag back underneath, and you drag back almost under the ball like swimming, and you pop out the back. So your hand comes, go back, your hand would come out there, then you come forward. If it goes back out here, you're slowing down. You want to pop it out there and go far forward, through, out. So when you drag, I encourage all kids nearly all the way through, probably the age groups, to drag the board. So learn to drag the board both hands, not just one hand. The reason is, if you've got wind coming this way, you've got to drag the board in this hand because the board's going to want to go like that. If she drags the board, it's going to come across her and it could trip her up. So you want to learn to drag the board with hands. Playing left and right, and also in competition, if you're doing a board relay or something like that, you have to drag the hand this side because the person has to touch it. So later on. So it's good to learn the skill to drag both sides, but Tilly prefers this hand. The reason is the board will drag out with the wind because the wind's coming towards me. So the drag, if she drags it, it'll walk away. You don't want to get stuck between with the board at risk of tripping you over. That's where injury happens. So I'll get Till just to walk in, and then she'll show us her mounting and paddling skills. We can't really see her arms, but when she pushes up, she's in a good position to ride over the white water. And she's still in a good paddling position. Nice cross core. So in the early waves, she can just pushing up on the board slightly and letting the water wash under. Didn't have to move much to catch the white water. So there is a balance when you ride it in. The same again with learning to drag it in. You want to drag it both hands. You want the board to stay on the seaward side. So the next progression, when you drag the board in, do it walking a few times before you start running. If you do it running straight away, which the kids are all I guarantee they'll land somewhere back here and they'll overcomplicate it. So it's better if we walk a few times before they start running at it, because you want to get that really good, strong position that we talked about almost straight away, because you don't get a lot of chance to adjust in our surf. So you want to learn to land almost in that position. I have dug a hole in the sand. Hop up, Till. Next progression, you're running around with the board. We'll land it in our hole. So it runs down, drops it on, then she goes to bunny hop. Her hands would go normally like that, and then she would jump next to her board with both legs in the air. Much easier to show you this. You can do the front beach, or the 7 you can learn to do. You've got the shallow timber. You can actually have bunny hop races. So I can now run down, do some bunny hops and paddle for us. And you normally keep going, so she'll jump on and paddle. Normally when you can't get your knees out is when you stop. But see, she's going to hit another sandbar. Probably won't realise, but you can get off and bunny hop because you bunny hop faster than you paddle. That little pressing up thing is what you do in these small waves because you want to maintain momentum into the wave. So she's grabbed the handles, turn around and catch another wave. But you can do that along the beach. So to practice that, you would go like a wade race. You could go out around a can and then or line them up on the beach and go all the way down the beach. Practice bunny hop. Same applies coming in. You do bunny hop coming in, run up. I'll just show you what she's doing out in the sea to when the white water's coming at her and she's just pushing up on the board to get to skip over. So if you lie back on the board in a wave roll, yep, she's keeping the nose, the weight of the board down so it pushes over the sea. Just actually move position on the board. So if you found that good position, come forward a bit. Found that position, you should be able to stay there to get through the sea. The next learn is how to roll. So when the wave comes over, she'll roll. The board, big wave comes, rolls the board, then rolls back on. No wrong or right to which way you roll. You can roll off one way and on, so you can do it like a full roll, which is what a lot of people do, but some people prefer to roll off and on the same way. It's not through. So when you come at the wave, you want to throw it, strong position, and then you push down. You almost embed that part of the board into the water to help yourself on. Okay, this is probably a skill for under 13s. Maybe if you've got more skilled under 12s, you would teach them this. The next thing you'd learn to go out the surf is called popping. And the reason it's called popping is when you're paddling, you sit back on the end of the board, you pull the nose up, and you pull the handles into the sea before you jump up as the wave comes under you. So imagine pulling that down with, so you pull down, and then it pops over, and you land back in your neutral position. So it's called popping because you pull, you've got a wave comes, down, grab the top handle, transition back. But you should end up back in your strong position. Much better. It was a gripper. Straight away.
So today we're going to talk to you a little bit about beach sprints and also the beach relay. Two really important aspects of surf lifesaving in terms of speed and agility to get to a particular client before we hit the water, or if there's actually an issue on land. So beach sprinting is all about two things. It's about technique and it's about teamwork. So we'll go through each of those aspects right now. First, technique. Beach sprinting is all about getting the right momentum through the sand. A lot different from running on a track. Obviously it's a softer surface, there's more divots, and therefore it's really important that when you run that we're going to keep our bodies up straight rather than leaning forward as you might do on the track. The reason for that is if you hit a divot, pretty quickly if you're leaning forwards you're going to find that you're going to go and topple over. The second thing is actually in terms of your stride. Actually having a higher knee lift through the sprint is really important for those reasons in terms of not dragging your feet through the sand and also not hitting a divot. So technique when running, straighter back, higher knee lift. In terms of hand movements, very much cheek to cheek. And you tend to get that explosive power through your arms initially to get yourself going and then keep your momentum through the run. Really important to stay relaxed through the run. And that way you actually find that your form will hold up a lot more better. So now we'll just talk a little bit then about the beach relay. Again, personally, one of my favourite events that I compete in, because it's all about team, and there's nothing better than that. So we're going to go through two things in a moment. One is in terms of a baton technique, in terms of those who are giving, and then also baton technique in terms of those who are receiving. The baton is the most important bit of kit that we've got. Really importantly, you don't drop this, as if you do, you're back to the start again, and you can lose a significant amount of ground. So in terms of those who's giving the baton, really important to keep a low grip on the baton. And that way you can continue with your stride, but also what it does is give you a big surface area to be able to pass the baton on to your teammate. So when approaching your teammate, you'll find that they will be slightly on the move, and will have their hands, you can see, in a butterfly formation. The reason for that is I can then see and stick the baton in the hands kind of clearly, and I won't be able to push through and hit him in the chest. So a really good baton change is one where there's plenty of baton. As you approach your teammate, holding it up so they can spot it in between the hands and letting them go. Really important we get that technique right. Also really important to be slightly on the move when receiving the baton, and that way you're moving with momentum into your relay leg. So just to recap again, holding the baton, holding it low, spotting your teammate in terms of how they'll receive the baton, the butterfly hold, and then holding enough where they can see it into the hand and moving beyond. Really important aspects of beach relay to practice during the NIPA program. The long run is also another important aspect of what we do in surf lifesaving. You might question, why is long runs important? Well, you might find you're on the beach and there might be an incident further down the beach where you need to get to in a hurry, particularly running with a tube, or it might be the ability to run up to look for help, or particularly to direct an ambulance down to the patient. So whilst long run's all about endurance, it's also about doing that with a little bit of pace, so ensuring that we can get to the patient in the quickest amount of time possible.
Good afternoon, my name's Henry Kiss and I'm one of the mentors for the patrols here at Portsea Beach. And we just want to talk today about some of the nipper games we can play while we're on nippers. Now these are important to keep the kids busy. Idle hands are the devil's workshop, so it's important that we keep the kids busy at all times. No kid ever got into trouble if they was, while they're doing stuff. It's when they're sitting around and they're bored. So what we've got is a few games for the kids to play, and the first one is Fish, Fish, Shark. So we have the kids sitting around in a circle, and then one kid who's it will be walking around the outside, touching the kids on the shoulder, going fish, 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 and then as soon as he touches someone and calls them a shark, the shark gets up and chases them around, and the first one to get back to the spot, the empty spot, gets that spot, and then the person who missed out is now the shark. It's the same as Duck, Duck, Goose. We've just changed it so it's more aquatic. The next one is What's the Time, Mr. Shark? So similar to What's the Time, Mr. Wolf, you may have played as a child, where you'll have Mr. Shark at the other end, looking away, and the kids will be creeping up and they'll say, "What's the time, Mr. Shark?" And he'll say, "It's 4 o'clock." And they'll take 4 steps. And when the kids get close enough, that's when Mr. Shark will attack and he'll try and tag someone to be the next Mr. Shark. Some of the other games we have, my personal favourite is Simon Says. So Simon Says, board paddle. Simon Says, watch the swimmers. Simon Says, swim. Simon Says, slip, slop, slap. Simon Says, beach sprint. Simon Says, beach flags. And Simon Says, dead ant. Now we also have some fun relays for the kids to do. And they're marked on the sheets there, but some of them are crab races, where the kids have to go along the beach sideways like a crab. Other ones can be dizzy sticks, where they have a baton, put the baton in the air. You have to go around 5 times and then try and give your baton to the next person, and they do the same. We have the jelly roll, which is where the kids do a forward, you have to dive forward onto your hands, do a forward roll on the sand. I won't do it on the plastic grass. And we also have things like a wheelbarrow race, where you pick up the kids. You have 2 kids, one grabs the ankles, they go to the line, they turn around and they come back. These are all over 10, 15 metres, not very long at all. If you wanted to do some drills, say for the older kids, some of the dynamic run-through drills that we've listed here. So generally over 2 lines in the sand over maybe 10 metres, and we're doing high knees as we run through, butt kicks. You put your hand on it, and the kids have to kick their hands side to side, but 10 metres and then come back. The grapevine, you guys would all remember this one, I'm sure. Backwards running, and then some lunges. And those are the sorts of activities that we like, that will lead into their sprint warm-ups and those sorts of things anyway. So there are a few other games here. Have a read through, get to know them. But remember, always keep the kids busy, and we'll see you next time.